Wes, a tier of 3 teams that I've put in here that have a real hope of pushing Boston. And you tell me if you would cut anyone from this or if you would add anyone to this. The New York Knicks, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Philadelphia 76ers.
That's what I have. Same 3.
I would say for me right now, the team I give the best chance of pushing Boston is Philly. Where are you at on this?
I think I would agree with you on that. I like the 76ers. So I think most people would consider the 76ers or the Knicks. I would actually have the 76ers and then the Bucks and then the Knicks in terms of pushing the Celtics. What I like about what Philadelphia did this offseason is they doubled down on what it is that makes them special, which is Joel Embiid and Joel Embiid's 2-man game with Tyrese Maxey. They got his 3rd star in Paul George, who just fits seamlessly with those 2 guys. And Paul George is obviously a guy who can defend one of Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown on any given night. And then they have some other parts like Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre, these other guys who are able to credibly at least defend those guys. What the Knicks are trying to do is beat the Celtics at their own game. They're trying to play a little bit smaller at the 5. They let Hartenstein go. They double down on wing depth. This is all the same stuff. Everybody on the perimeter for them, other than Jalen Brunson, can defend. But I don't see them being better at what Boston does than Boston. And so that's my biggest concern with the Knicks. I think to beat the Celtics, which is like this Swiss movement, beautifully crafted watch, you need a hammer to just break the watch open. And that, to me, is what the 76ers built. It's Joel Embiid just being bigger and badder than everybody else. Now, obviously, you've got health questions with the Sixers and with Joel Embiid. That's a whole other thing. But if they're healthy, I like their ability to beat Boston because you got to play a different game and then be better at that than what Boston can do to you. And then ditto from the Milwaukee Bucks. If we're talking about hammers, there's no greater hammer in the league than Giannis, who led the league in dunks last year. Quite literally, the hammer. So you've got Giannis. You got the 2-man game with Damian Lillard. I think they'll be a little bit better than they were last year. I think I'm still higher on than consensus on Milwaukee than most.
You're higher than them on me for sure.
They just still have
very
Giannis,
skeptical.
so I can't rule him out. He could be the best player on the planet again this year.
Yeah. One last thing about the Knicks: are you underrating the power of friendship? Is really my question here. Like, are you?
Yeah,
okay,
friendship is really overrated. The last time I checked, Chris, best friends didn't win the championship.
LeBron and Wade.
No, I mean that was talent, right? Like Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan were the best of friends during their days in Toronto, and they still got beat every year in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Friendship is helpful. Friendship only gets you so far, right? That's like the Knicks were awesome last year because Jalen Brunson had a top 5 MVP year. That's why the Knicks were awesome. The Knicks were awesome last year because Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart outplayed their contract values. Isaiah Hartenstein played himself into a $30 million contract. You think the Thunder gave Isaiah Hartenstein a $30 million contract because he's a good guy? No, he's an awesome basketball player. Tom Thibodeau was an awesome coach last year. The friendship thing was so overrated. And I know you asked me that facetiously, and I appreciate you kind of teeing it up for me and letting me slam it out of the park here. Yeah. But I am so over like the Villanova vibes and the fact that they all have a podcast together. Because
so you're not subscribed to the Roommate Show is what you're telling me.
I actually don't subscribe to any player-hosted podcast. I see the clips on my social media feeds, and that's what. And like, I'm not in throwing shade. I just don't happen to subscribe to any of them. Like, they have great value. There's great stories. Those stories tend to make their way into my timeline, and I consume them that way.
Yeah, that's more than valid. Philly, I think we've hit on a ton in the last couple months. I think it's just worth saying with them, they have Embiid, who could be the best player in the world this year, could like win an MVP again, entirely possible. George is an incredible ad for them. I love the work they did to round out this roster in the summer. Like I just think like even if they're primed with Drummond, like Andre Drummond deserves credit for really reinventing himself, like post the Cleveland flameout. He has really and the weird stuff in LA. He has really developed into just like, I know what I am. I'm gonna get rebounds. I'm gonna contest shots. I'm gonna try to finish. And he's very
like,
flawed.
He's like second stint Lakers Dwight Howard, who helped them win a championship.
Yeah. Having that guy to back up Embiid, so Embiid like has like a slightly sore ankle one night. It's like, take the night off. It's okay. Like we can play the long game. They are equipped to play the long game because of
not
Andre
just
Drummond.
that, but they also have Paul George and Tyrese Maxey to score some points.
But even just like but just Embiid's like maintenance and not needing to like play through stuff like and say like we you don't have to be so stubborn and fight through like a knee twist. Like Andre
and then he
can
could
like
be healthy
it's
for the
okay.
playoffs. And I also think Philadelphia, in terms of pushing Boston, I think they're going to win a ton of regular season games. I think this
I
team is
agree.
built to win a ton of regular season games. I think they're going to win 60 games this year if everybody's able to stay moderately healthy. Even if you put Embiid on a little bit of a maintenance program where he doesn't play the second nights of back-to-backs and you give him one night off every couple of weeks, they could still kind of cruise their way to 60 wins. And I don't see Boston coming out in the same way that they did last year, again, winning the Eastern Conference by 14 games. I just don't see them coming out with that kind of prioritization of the regular season. They know what they can do. They just got to be a top 3 or 4 seed in the East, and they know they can get to the finals. But if the Sixers end up being the number 1 seed, that just makes the path to an NBA Finals a lot easier for them, right? And so in terms of pushing the Celtics, I like Philadelphia. Milwaukee, by the way, and this is what I keep saying, it was a season from hell last year for the Milwaukee Bucks. They still finished 3rd in the East. Like, this is a regular season wins machine as long as they have Giannis. That's another team that I wouldn't sleep on getting the number 1 seed. And if that happens, who knows?
Can I just read you the roster for a second? Like this is I agree with you. Giannis, you could have a bounce back year from Dame. Giannis is in his prime. Maybe Middleton's a little healthier this year. Maybe just a normal full Doc Rivers year, even if we don't think of Doc Rivers as the best coach in the world, can be more successful than them than what Adrian Griffin was. That's
Another regular season wins guy.
Yeah.
Postseason problems have been well documented.
Yes. But it's Dame. It's ranked in, this is salary. So Dame and Giannis making the same amount. Then Middleton, Brook, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, AJ Johnson, Marshawn Beauchamp, AJ Green, DeLon Wright, Gary
clear
Trent,
delineation there, right?
And that's what scares me compared to the other teams in this list. It's like the Knicks deep as hell. The Celtics obviously deep as hell. Philly, I like their depth more. Even if they assembled it in similar ways on the fringes, Philly's depth to me, particularly just because they got lucky with the Caleb Martin situation and Caleb Martin agent messing that up for Caleb Martin's bank account. They came out better with depth. They have the worst depth to me of the teams that we're thinking about as top tier East teams.
But they have Giannis. So I think there's you have holes up and down this second tier, right? With Philadelphia, I think there's a major question of, are they really starting Caleb Martin at the 4? Because the Heat tried that, and it was not viable long term. That would be my concern with Philadelphia. Joel Embiid, obviously bigger than Bam Adebayo on the back line. That helps them a little bit more in terms of answering the size. They have Paul George there, who could play the 4 a little bit in name also. They have some options, Kelly Oubre, whatever. But that's a concern for me. I know they added Yabusele. You and I love Yabusele. We got a lot of stock in Yabusele. We still don't know if Yabusele is an NBA player, right? So that's the concern with Philly, and then obviously the health of Joel Embiid in general. With Milwaukee, the depth is definitely an issue. With the Knicks, I wonder, like, we talked about Boston's concern at center in terms of health. I mean, the Knicks see your concerns at center with health and raise you one Mitchell Robinson, right?
Yeah.
Because they are very reliant on Mitchell Robinson to play a lot of games, and he's probably not gonna. And then behind him, you've got Jericho Sims, Precious Achua. They're going to have to play OG Anunoby and Julius Randle at the 5. That's what Knicks fans will tell. Oh, we're going to play small this year. Okay, cool.
Those
OG
are not
Anunoby
Tibbs.
but also extremely injury prone.
Yeah.
And Julius Randle coming off of major injuries and a major surgery. So there might be nights, and there's probably going to be a night where Tom Thibodeau is looking at his rotation in January and saying, am I playing Josh Hart at center tonight? Because that's my only option. And so, and that's my concern with the Knicks. Also, they don't have they don't really have a second creator, unless they're going to be really reliant on Julius Randle. He could be that guy if he has a bounce back year. I guess Mikal Bridges is more of a third offensive option than a second offensive option, but he's good enough. Dante DiVincenzo, maybe you kind of just do it as like the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts kind of deal. But there's concerns with all 3 of these teams, is my point.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think with the Knicks, the center question's a good one, because I would add, on top of the Mitchell Robinson injury concerns, I would add 2 things. Number one, Hartenstein was so good last year, and it's why he got a massive amount of money from the Thunder, because he's really good at that interior passing. He was creating good shots at the rim for his teammates with passing. That is not exactly what Mitchell Robinson brings to the table. He's a great offensive rebounder, good rim protector, but he doesn't give you that same secondary kind of pressure release valve stuff from the center spot. He just doesn't. Achua does not either. Secondly, the unorthodox, not even unorthodox, but more modern center solutions are not things that I think we have seen Tibbs super willing to embrace. Like other coach, like if you took another average NBA coach, and Tibbs I think is above average, but if you just took like Mike Brown from, maybe he's not the best example, but like take Ime Udoka from Houston and threw him into the Knicks and said, okay, what does a different coach give you in this environment? I think you'd be more likely to see Randall at center. I think you'd be more likely to see Anunoby play some center and see Josh Hart play some center and embrace the weirdness of the roster. Tibbs fully embracing that part of this team's identity, I think, is necessary for this team to get to reach their ceiling. And I think we're going to find out how willing he is to do some of that work that I, again, think is highly necessary for this team to hit whatever ceiling they're going to hit.
Yeah, there's a version of this Knicks team where everything clicks. They embrace small ball. Thibodeau kind of throws that curveball that nobody's expecting, and that becomes their identity. And they're extremely versatile, and they're extremely dangerous, and they're way more unpredictable than they were last season, which kind of bit them at the end, right? Like, this is a team that still just made the second round of the playoffs. That's how far they got 2 seasons ago. There's all these great vibes in New York, but they've been a second round and out team in the Eastern Conference the last 2 years. So they needed to push it. They needed to evolve. So in that sense, I don't mind the changeup. And by the way, it's not like they let Hartenstein walk. They were trying to bring him back, and the Thunder threw $30 million at him. So it just didn't work. But if this doesn't work, if this changeup for the Knicks doesn't work, there's going to be Knicks fans who look at the Mikal Bridges acquisition and everything that it cost, all the first-round picks, and say, are we sure we wouldn't have been better off keeping all those first-round picks and just bringing back Hartenstein?
It's an entirely valid question. Wes, let me ask you this broadly about these 3 teams. We have I think 3 different ideas of how to beat the Knicks or how to beat Boston. You have the Knicks, who are Boston styled, saying we're going to match strength for strength. Philly is, obviously they have a superstar, but it is, we're going to attack you from a different way. And the Bucks are a flat out, I think, talent bet. They are maybe the best player in the world. Dame, Middleton, Lopez. We're betting on the high end talent. Which of those models do you think is the most? Is if you were designing a team in a lab, constructing on an NBA front office, which version of this attack plan to beat Boston in the East would you want to latch onto?
I would probably go with Philadelphia. Although I would really, if I'm starting in the lab with one ingredient, I would want Giannis.
Yes,
that's the guy I want, because he can go right through Kristaps Porzingis. He can go right through Al Horford. Tatum and Brown are not going to stop him. The Celtics can build a wall, and that could definitely help. But now that you've got Damian Lillard there, that's sort of the guy who makes you extend the wall. And once you extend the wall, obviously it's no longer a wall. So, but you already hit on the depth and the Chris Middleton questions. It's so flimsy. I don't see how they could possibly defend the Boston Celtics, and so that's my main concerns, is that unless Giannis is scoring 60 points a night, it kind of feels like it's going to be a problem for Milwaukee in a series against Boston. So I'm going to go with Philadelphia. Kristaps Porzingis has done an okay job guarding Joel Embiid. Embiid, as we know, he wants to get to that mid-range pull-up. He wants to kind of shoot from 3, and Porzingis has enough length to bother him, and so he's done that. We saw that last year in the Celtics 76ers matchups. But now that you add another year of Tyrese Maxey and Embiid together, you add Paul George to the mix, I just think there's enough there and you have enough wing defenders too. You've got Caleb Martin, you've got Kelly Oubre on that roster, as well as Paul George. So you've got guys you could throw at Tatum and Brown, unlike what Milwaukee has, and you still have a hammer in Joel Embiid, although not as dynamic a hammer as Giannis. He's still a hammer. He could still be more physical, more dominant than anybody on the Celtics, because you're not going to out-depth the Celtics, right? They're always going to be the deeper, more complete team, the team that fits better. The one thing you can do is have the better player on the floor. And Philadelphia and Milwaukee both have better players, one singular better player than the Celtics have. And that's going to be how you beat the Celtics. But you're just going to need the supporting cast to step up too.
I think you are right that the first ingredient I would want is Giannis. Of the star players, he's the most, I think, unguardable among these guys. I think the issue when I come up with Milwaukee specifically is I think Boston's incredibly well equipped to defend Dame.
Yep.
Like, Dame could still cook, but is it going to be as efficient? Is it as efficient as you need when Derek White, Andrew Holiday, and Tatum and Brown can, and all of that can be thrown at you. That's a really tough ask for Dame. That just even if Dame was 28, I think that would still be a tough ask. That's just a bludgeoning of really
Yeah,
really
I
good
think for
guard
Milwaukee
defenders.
though, it's like the two-man. How does the two-man game sort of multiply everybody's impact, right? Between
How
Giannis
many
and
pick and
Dame.
rolls are they going to run, Wes? Are we
Well,
going to
they
talk
have
about
to.
this all year again? I
I
know,
know
but it's like,
they got to do
well,
it.
here
But
we
now
go.
they do have a full training camp with Damian Lillard. They've got Doc Rivers, who does tend to get guys to buy into a system.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll see more of it this year. I also think Giannis is pissed. I think he's pissed about being overlooked. I think he's pissed about how this team has performed in the playoffs the last 2 years. They're gonna wanna do something this year, and I think that's enough to get Giannis to buy into setting a few more screens and for Dame to play that kind of style also.
Philly's the answer for me to my own question.
Yep.
It just is. It is the situation with Embiid, with Maxey, even if they can throw a lot at him. It's really the Paul George thing, I think, on top of it. Like, Paul George is such a good counterweight that both fits Philly's style and can kind of push on what works with the Boston side of things. Like, if he defends one of Tatum and Brown at a really high level for a whole series, and like Oubre and Yabusele and like all those other guys do a
Caleb
passable
Martin.
enough Caleb Martin do a passable enough job on the other J, you're an Embiid can, I think, do what he does, and if he's healthy, like you're in a really good spot, I think, to really press Boston at some key points. So I think Philly has to be the answer here.